So, a little combination of ideas that fit together, have been fitting together for me over the past couple of weeks as I've been solidifying and thinking about a lot, or slash praying through and having revealed to me like who I am, what is my vocation, what defines me, what do I sort of center on and prioritize to pour myself into. Related to what it is to be a finite being, consecration, vocation, death, the transcendent particular, and a word from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows called oneism, which is like, tangentially, but it's like the sorrow of only being one person in one place at one particular time in a world so full of variety, and especially if you don't believe in the afterlife or resurrection, you would never get to see it all or be everything and experience everything. And then also simply the irreplaceable, unrepeatable particularity of each thing that exists in the world, in the cosmos, and also of each moment. I'm mostly talking about, I guess, space here, but it could also be applied to time. One can think of a self, or like a finite being, as a sort of particularization and center and concentration of the whole cosmos and the whole divine media. Divine media being from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. I use it just for all of the whole symphony and harmony of the cosmos, all of the threads, all of the angels and God's energies and the spiritual threads and just everything in the universe, taken as a whole, a living whole. So you have God beyond being, capital B being or however, and then the divine media, just everything, and each being is a center and particularization of that, oriented to be, I guess, in one sense, then also to love and to concentrate itself on and to pour the entire resources of the universe and of the divine media on just one particular, one gestalt, one vocation to which this self in the center is consecrated. Also having to do with it being a limited and defined and finite self. We're sort of defined by our limitations, literally, limitations and potentialities, but as far as the borders of things, it's the limits. Yeah. So, beings as concentrations of the divine, the entire divine media and all the resources sort of flowing and funneling towards one particular, with a sort of bias for that. It reminds me of some sermon illustration I heard once of God's love, but in this case I'm using it as God's love channeled through a being, or that is the purpose of the being. Being like the Amazon River, flowing down the entire Amazon river to just water one flower. And it's sort of like that. And I guess if you consider the idea of a guardian angel or something would be an example of, it's powerful and just there to channel the entire resources to the particular person. And I guess I should say the original context of that was I was really tired, and I was sitting outside of one of the shops at this camp, and they were all inside laughing and with a lot of energy, and I was oh, I'm so tired. And I was thinking that I guess they are a center and they have all this energy and they have one sort of space that they're in, and then I have another one, and it's not quote unquote God is in he's in there in like both perspectives at once, or like there is yeah, it's not like, oh, it's bad that I'm out here like all tired because I'm not sharing in their energy, or that they're in there laughing and like being loud because they're not sympathizing with my tiredness. It's like there's both, and sort of both of us are our own centers of everything, and or have our own, and I think that this aspect of limitation, consecration, devotion, is sort of an aspect of like agape love in the sense of creative love, because like every particular thing that exists in a sense exists because some being or like some force loves that in particular enough to say, okay, I'm going to stop here. Like out of all the options I choose this, and I love this, and I want this to exist, and I will protect it and affirm it, and like it is perfect as it is. I was thinking about this with like some mushrooms that I saw on a log the other day. They actually grew more today because it rained. But like, I am not whatever the being is that's consecrated to those mushrooms, so to speak. And like, I'm incapable of loving those mushrooms entirely as quote unquote as God loves them, I guess. But there is somebody, so to speak, who does. And also, in Paris, I was comparing all the cathedrals, and some of them were not my style, and some of them were. But even the ones that weren't my style, I'm like, I may be sort of on the edge of this, or like looking at it from the wrong angle to love it, but somebody or some spirit, and I guess like humans do participate in that pattern, the builders and architects of the cathedral, but like somebody loved that cathedral enough to say that this is how it should be, and in every detail it's like perfect, and love it enough to make it hold together and be what it is, and somebody is delighting in it as it is. And again, I guess limiting themselves in that way to afford the existence of that particular and defined and limited thing. So yeah, the center would do this. But the other, like, branch of this, I guess, is, so limits, definitions, finitude, never heard that word aloud. These two are, I guess, the aspects of one's existence or identity. And really everything that exists, X being like out of, so anything down from this level of things, of just like pure beyond being, or capital B like being, I guess those are two levels, but however, is limited by its definition. I guess the most fundamental distinction between being between the self and the other. But then there's just, it's just all like oppositions and limitation from there down, and that's how things proceed from into, I mean, that's how anything exists. Simply what it is. And yeah, like the transcendent in particular. Well, that's later, but this existence and identity in this way, having to do with limitations, I think is a way to understand, perhaps in a more positive light, or like in a more beauty-oriented light, death and sacrifice and that whole aspect of things. Another example being like with a word or categorizing a situation in a certain way. You're going to highlight some elements of the situation or person or whoever, and you're going to hide some elements, and that's simply how it is. And what is hidden by one categorization, like if I call that like a cup or a water bottle, I'm hiding, I don't know, that it's green, or I'm hiding that it's like made of plastic, or I'm hiding that it like could be used. Why I always think of like as a weapon is the alternate categorization, I don't know. Like as a hammer to hammer nails in, I don't know. But I'm hiding some elements and highlighting some, but that which is hidden by one will be highlighted by another, and so there's this sort of harmony of everything. Like mushroom, what would you call it? Creative spirit of the mushroom is on one, just doing the mushroom thing, but then there's also the one to take care of the cathedrals. I don't know. Um, where am I? So, yeah, highlighting and hiding. And I think this is a way to think of, like, has to do with death and sacrifice, because when you affirm yourself, when you define yourself, and are dedicated and consecrated, vocated, and then you're also saying yes to one thing and no to everything else. That's just like by definition, which is a sacrifice and which is a sort of death to the other possibilities, or at least can. Yeah. And I guess a way to tie these ideas together is like the phrase, the hill that I'll die on. Because if you say that something's a hill you'll die on, that's the way that you define yourself. That's like what you're going to protect. That's your limit. Like, you sort of end there, and that's your identity. Something you're going to protect. And yeah. But the beautiful thing is that this is just the way that existence works, and like this is a good thing. So it's like the cross is like sort of the narrow way that opens then into life and resurrection and into the transcendent. So when a particular is very defined in this way and does sort of find its vocation and is consecrated to that to which it's supposed to be consecrated. I mean, not that you should limit yourself, not that like we should limit ourselves just arbitrarily or just like too much or in bad ways that legit are limiting, but when there's a genuine identity and vocation, what it does, it like opens into the transcendent and makes whatever it is a microcosmos and makes it almost able to have everything as much as any existent thing can have everything. Like, yeah, to possess like the transcendent, the universal, in the only way that there is to possess it, which is through the narrow way of consecration and centering and vocation, limitation, all of this. Instead of trying to be on all of the hills, the particular hills at once. You sort of see all of the hills in your one hill, as it were. And a concrete example of this, well, I mean, one of it is marriage, which is cutting yourself off from like every other, or from the depth of like every other person in order to be dedicated to the depth of like one person. Another one would be choosing a religion, which I recently, I mean, I didn't even realize, like, I really have come through quite a time of like doubting and really almost dropping everything about Christianity, which has been harder for me than I even realized until sort of the color started coming back, and I'm like, yes, oh, I'm back home. But it had to happen because like I was realizing that Christianity isn't universally the only right way, or like if you have the truth or God, or however, as the light, there's all these different colors, which are the different ways of expressing it, and like different religions, different worldviews, and they are all equally true, so to speak, and equally legitimate. So I'm like, should I be still centering myself in Christianity? Or like, is that like cringe to limit myself in that way, or would it make me prejudiced? Or like cutting myself off from some of the truth or something like that. But, and perhaps some people can sort of understand all religions from the inside. But this is not possible for me, I've realized. And so instead, what I can do is not say, well, Christianity is a universal absolute, and not say, well, I want to be in this color and this color and this color and this color, and like on the level of existence possess everything all at once, like just like all of the particulars at once. on this level. It has to be at this level. But rather center and say, okay, for me, Christianity is the center. And it's the one that I can understand, like, from the inside, and most fully, and most personally and immediately. And then going, like, up through that, through, like, limitation. And in this way, I understand all religions as much as it's possible for me to understand all religions, better than if I tried to spread myself, like, too thin here, without centering, without committing. Because, sort of by analogy, and by plumbing the depths of my own, I discover, like, by analogy I can understand the others, if not from the inside, because that's not my calling. And I am happy and fulfilled, and I have enough in what I have, which is what I guess makes it, like, a good limitation. Like, if I had said, okay, well, I'm gonna stick with, like, the Baptist church, which is where I grew up, that would have been too much. Yeah, that would have been the wrong place to stop in the killing sort of limitation, whereas this one gives more life. So yeah, that through this sort of death and, like, sacrifice and limitation can, if it's the right one, will open into the transcendent and allow one to essentially have everything as much as one can have everything, or in the only way that it is possible to. And this is all sort of elaborating on the idea of the transcendent particular, which I think is so interesting. Like, and then humility sort of thing. Like, or so that, like, the mirrors of each other are the completely transcendent, like, beyond all being, beyond everything, and then the absolutely particular, which is very defined and very much one unique thing, which is just itself. And I guess the thing that ties those two together is uniqueness, because being, capital B, and, like, God is unique because obviously that's the only, like, there cannot be two of that. That's, like, the highest thing, or being, beyond being, or however. But then the particular also is unique in that it's irrepeatable and unrepeatable and only itself. So there's a mirroring of the two extremes. And similarly a mirroring of, like, humility, I guess. Or I've heard that, like, humility mirrors the divine simplicity, which I found interesting. One way that I think of humility is just, like, openness, which doesn't really apply here too much. But I guess another way to think of humility would be that the humility of capital B being, or, like, the simplicity and the humility of, like, God would be to subsume absolutely everything and to sort of take in everything without reserve and without being a respecter of persons, right? And without, there's a word I'm looking for, like, judging, or not, you know what I mean? Everything. No limitation. And not turning anything down. And then the humility of a being, an a self, is, like, consenting to its vocation and to the death and sacrifice which brings it into existence, to be what it is and love what it is called to love, and again, not unnecessary limits and not, like, quote unquote, like, killing or, like, bad limitations, but truly to accept what it is and its definition and its identity and find that and, like, truly go all out and pour itself completely into that instead of trying to be everything existent at once type of thing. Which is almost, well, I think it could help against, like, unhealthy quote unquote humility of just, like, I'm not very good, and I wish I could do this, and I wish I could do that, I wish I could do more, but instead saying, I am this because it's my identity and calling, and that's that in me that mirrors the universality and the transcendence of God, and, like, is the strength of us is our ability to be devoted and to be concentrated and to concentrate the entire resources of the universe and of God and of everything on that which we are called to love and called to create and called to be.